A woman was giving birth, but the smell of blood attracted a pack of wolves. By the time the child was born, they were already surrounded. The woman quickly collapsed. Just as the wolves were about to attack the child, a colorful butterfly floated in and stopped them. The three spirit grandmas, who can bestow life, suddenly sensed a heavenly sign and arrived in time. The wolves were driven away. Meanwhile, the child's father was giving the royal title to King Songjo. King Songjo of the In section to use the power of a possessing demon king to try to dominate the world. However, the demon king was violent and uncontrollable. To prevent mass slaughter, he passed the throne to his son King Songjo and prepared to seal the demon into his own portrait. But the demon king was too powerful. The sorcerer was no match. Just then, a divine power suddenly appeared. It was the three spirit grandmas coming to help. The sorcerer quickly joined forces with them to seal the demon. As the seal was completed, the furious demon placed a curse, causing plagues and famine. The descendants of the sorcerer would wander in darkness, and the descendants of the painter would never know peace. The sealing was finished, but poor Cheonji, just born, was blinded by the curse. The three spirit grandmas couldn't lift it but found another way to avoid its effects. That way was through a newborn named Haram. Time flew by, and under the demon's curse, the people of the world suffered. The court sorcerer decided to find a child from the western regions to offer to the heavens and ask for guidance. Haram was born with the gift of water sight and caught the sorcerer's eye. As the sorcerer prepared to take him away, she unexpectedly saw someone thought long dead. It turned out that after the demon's sealing, most sorcerers were eliminated. But Songjin survived by falling off a cliff. Haram was his son. Despite being reunited, Songjin was no match for the court sorcerer and had no choice but to submit. On the road to the sacrificial ceremony, Songjin suddenly discovered a demonic artifact. He attacked, but the person he struck was none other than Cheonji's father. Since sealing the demon, the painter Hong Eunho had gone mad, but Songjin's blow brought him back to his senses. Songjin recognized Hong Eunho, and thus began the destined connection between the two fated individuals. At the marketplace, they encountered the three spirit grandma disguised as an old woman. She handed Haram a butterfly before he could refuse. It disappeared and left a mark on his neck. Haram thought he was seeing things and ignored it, not realizing it was a protective charm. The two joined a painting troupe. Cheonji loved drawing. Even though she was blind, she still practiced. Though she couldn't hold a brush, she drew on the ground what she imagined. Cheonji had never seen stars and thought they were round eggs. They then went to a peach grove. Cheonji wanted to eat peaches but couldn't pick them due to her blindness. Though they knew it was wrong to steal, Haram picked some for her. They were quickly caught and injured, but Cheonji was happy. It was her first time having a friend. When they parted, Cheonji touched Haram's face to remember what he looked like. She stamped Haram like a seal so he wouldn't run away, and they promised to meet again, unaware that this promise could never be fulfilled. Cheonji waited at the agreed spot, while Haram, chosen as the sacrificial child, prayed at the altar. What was supposed to be a routine ritual turned dark. The head sorcerer secretly swapped it for a human sacrifice. Songjin sensed something was wrong and tried to save his son, but the head sorcerer had already prepared for this and subdued him. At this time, the second prince in the palace, influenced by the demon king's rage, set fire to the portrait sealing the demon. The demon king broke free from the seal and escaped the palace. His eyes instantly locked onto Haram, who was in the middle of the sacrificial prayer ceremony. The demon transformed into black mist and merged into Haram's body. At this critical moment in the heavenly ritual, thunder struck the altar. Haram, out of control, fell into the lake. On the other side, Cheonji, waiting for Haram, was also knocked into the water by a corpse blown away by the lightning. The prayer was declared successful, and everyone rejoiced. Only Songjin, who had just lost his son, was overwhelmed with grief. Underwater, the two children struggled desperately until they finally lost consciousness. Just as the demon king was about to take full control of Haram's body, the butterfly mark on Haram's neck suddenly activated. It turned out the three spirit grandma had long foreseen this and had placed a seal on him in advance. The three spirit grandma brought Haram back to shore. When he woke up, he could no longer see. His eyes had been transferred by the three-spirit grandma to Cheonji, breaking her curse. However, with her sight came a heavy destiny. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Cheonji became a talented painter. In order to treat her mentally ill father, she reluctantly worked for the head of the Moon Star Hall, forging talismans empowered by dark forces. One day, Cheonji finally earned enough money to finish her job. Just as she was leaving, she sensed someone behind the window. Before she could check, the head of the hall drove her away. The person behind the window was none other than Haram, who had been missing for 10 years. He was now a celestial officer and secretly the true master of Moonstar Hall. The night before, he had read the stars, which showed a noble person appearing in the east. Curious, he came to investigate, not realizing the noble person was Cheonji. Cheonji used her earnings to buy a miraculous medicine for her father, hoping it would help him recognize her again. But she didn't know the medicine was a scam, and the person behind it was the very hall master she worked for. The goal had been to drain her money and keep her under control. Cheonji accidentally overheard one of the pharmacists slip up and realized the medicine was fake. She chased the seller down for miles before learning everything was orchestrated by the hall master. Since the hall master was part of Moonstar Hall, Cheonji began to suspect it was all part of a massive fraud scheme. She didn't know that her words were overheard by Haram, who happened to be nearby. Though Haram wasn't aware of what the hall master had done, he quickly ordered his people to investigate. Cheonji, meanwhile, immediately reported the hall master for selling fake medicine. It turned out she had been collecting evidence all along. The hall master was swiftly taken away. When he spotted Cheonji in the crowd, he instantly knew he had been outsmarted. Cheonji basked in the satisfaction of revenge, unaware that retribution would come just as swiftly. That night, she ran into the hall master again, who had been rescued by one of his underlings. Cheonji turned and fled. Along the way, she saw a sedan chair and jumped in without caring who was inside. The person in the sedan was Haram. Though he didn't recognize Cheonji, he felt something special about her and helped her hide. As the carriage jolted on the road, they accidentally bumped into each other. At that moment, the seal on Haram's neck reacted. The demon king inside him was awakening. As the seal weakened, Haram's head throbbed in pain. Before completely losing control, he forced Cheonji out of the sedan. Confused, Cheonji thought he had kicked her out because of her poor hygiene or something. Meanwhile, Haram's body was covered in black smoke as his pain intensified. The sedan rocked violently, and the bearers, realizing something was wrong, stopped in a panic. After one more violent shake, everything suddenly fell eerily quiet. Thick black smoke spread out in all directions. The Demon King, breaking the seal, seized control of Haram's body and soared into the sky. The sedan bearers were terrified and scrambled to flee. One of them, Mansu, who had been worrying about his master's safety, ran with him. The Demon King, now free, immediately began searching for his eyes. At this moment, Cheonji was unaware that danger was approaching. She was rushing home on horseback when the grandmother of the three spirits suddenly appeared and asked her to rest together. Cheonji suddenly felt a chill and obediently moved closer to the fire. Before she knew it, she fell asleep. Meanwhile, the Demon King had found their location, but didn't detect them. The grandmother of the three spirits had already cast a barrier that masked their presence. The Demon King wandered the forest like a headless fly, unable to find them. After some time, Cheonji awoke, afraid her family might worry, so she quickly said goodbye to the grandmother. Just as she stepped out of the barrier, the Demon King detected her and appeared before her in an instant. Sensing danger, Cheonji turned around and came face to face with the Demon King. At the critical moment, time suddenly froze. A white tiger appeared slowly, then transformed into a human. The Demon King scoffed at the tiger spirit and broke free from his bindings to fight. But without his full power, the Demon King was no match. Just as the tiger spirit was about to strike the final blow, the grandmother of the three spirits stopped him and reinforced the seal. She told the tiger spirit that the Demon King could not be killed, only sealed. If Haram's body died, the Demon King would be freed. When Cheonji, the child of destiny, one day crafts the eternal vessel, only then can the demon king be sealed permanently. For now, they must protect both of them. Reluctantly, the tiger spirit obeyed, and as both spirits left, time resumed. Cheonji was left completely bewildered. Meanwhile, Ha-Ram woke up even more confused, unsure why he was in a tree. As he fumbled around, still blind, he slipped and fell, landing directly on Cheonji. When she woke up, she realized it was Ha-Ram, her savior, and he was alive. With no other choice, she struggled to carry him home. After settling Ha-Ram down, Cheonji noticed her hand was injured. She quickly wrapped it with a scarf she had carried for 10 years, the one Ha-Ram had given her when he was injured as a child. She had promised to return it the next day, but 10 years had passed. She didn't yet know that the man she had carried home was Ha-Ram himself. Watching him suffer from nightmares, her heart ached. She only relaxed when he finally calmed down. The next morning, Cheonji awoke to find herself sleeping in Ha-Ram's arms. Flustered, she panicked, feeling like a rogue who had taken advantage of a man while trying to help. She kept apologizing, only to realize he hadn't even woken up yet. That didn't stop her from secretly admiring his face, until he suddenly opened his eyes. Startled by his unfamiliar surroundings, Ha-Ram was initially on guard. But upon hearing Cheonji's voice, he immediately recognized her as the girl who had been calling him the night before. He asked Cheonji what had happened to him, but she was just as confused and couldn't give him an answer. Ha-Ram passed out again shortly after, leaving Cheonji no choice but to seek help from Master Jushin. Although her father Hong Eunho was mentally unstable, Jushin and the head of the painting troupe treated her like their own daughter. Before she could even speak, Jushin, who had been worried all night, scolded her for not coming home. Then the troupe leader arrived, noticing Cheonji's injured right hand and expressing concern. Feeling guilty, Cheonji apologized and explained that her benefactor was injured and unconscious and needed help. But the troupe leader, thinking she was making excuses again, didn't believe her and locked her in the storehouse. When Jushin came to bring her food, Cheonji begged her for help. Though she had been fooled by her many times before, seeing her so desperate softened her heart, and she agreed. Together, they secretly found a doctor and rushed to the pigment shop. By then, Ha-Ram had woken up and, realizing Cheonji wasn't there, tried to help himself. He struggled with no result, just as help was arriving. From a distance, Cheonji, who was running, saw a man and thought he was an enemy coming to seek revenge, so she picked up her pace. The horse was actually Mayan, the person Ha-Ram had just called out to. He brought Ha-Ram's subordinates along to find their leader. After a brief exchange, they noticed someone approaching, so he quickly covered Mayan to hide his presence. The newcomer was Cheonji, who had caught up. Seeing that Ha-Ram was safe, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, Ha-Ram took the opportunity to ask for Cheonji's name. Embarrassed, Cheonji blushed deeply. The repeated blushing made her look a little sweet. Hurriedly, she introduced herself as Hong Cheonji. Upon hearing the familiar name, Ha-Ram was instantly reminded of a scene from 10 years ago. Although Ha-Ram recognized Cheonji, he didn't reveal his identity. He bore a deep grudge and it wasn't the right time. After the rainy season ended years ago, his father had used magic to restore his sight, only for him to be killed again by royal guards sent under the king's orders. Even his mother was not spared. For years, Ha-Ram had been enduring life in the palace, waiting for the perfect moment for revenge, never expecting to meet Cheonji before that time came. Meanwhile, in the mountains, a large search party was looking for Ha-Ram. Prince Li Lu, upon hearing of Ha-Ram's disappearance, led a group to find him, using his military authority to assist. Cheonji didn't recognize him nor understand his intentions, so she lied, saying no one he was looking for was there. Even when Li Lu revealed his identity, Cheonji didn't believe him. How could someone in rags be a prince? She mocked him and was about to kick him out. Just then, hearing the noise, Ha-Ram came out. Li Lu quickly rushed forward, and Cheonji, thinking he meant harm, grabbed an axe and charged, until he heard Ha-Ram call him Third Prince. Shocked, Cheonji instantly dropped the weapon and quickly hid. The rest of the search party soon arrived. After escorting Ha-Ram and the others away, Cheonji came back out, feeling a bit reluctant. But she would soon see Haram again. The triennial painting contest was about to begin. Cheonji secretly added her name to the contestant list without the leader's permission. The catch? She had to deliver the list herself, to none other than the prince she had offended, Li Lu. To avoid being recognized, Cheonji disguised herself. Her auntie helped her borrow the clothes. On the way, she saw a passing sedan chair and thought of Haram, only for Haram to appear right before her the next second. Stunned, Cheonji wasn't sure if Haram remembered the dye shop, so she only mentioned the reason for her visit. But as soon as she spoke, Haram recognized her voice. Haram asked why Cheonji was pretending not to know him. Had he done something wrong? Cheonji quickly denied it and explained she had offended Li Lu. Haram burst into laughter and offered to deliver the list for him. Cheonji was overjoyed, until Li Lu suddenly appeared. Panicked, she turned and ran. Li Lu instantly recognized her and gave chase. Cheonji was soon caught. To escape, she hit Li Lu with a sudden headbutt, then quickly apologized. When Li Lu tried to take the list, Cheonji struggled with him over it. She feared Li Lu would take revenge through the competition. The two fought over the list, neither letting go. In the end, the list was completely ruined. Fortunately, Haram arrived just in time to catch the falling Cheonji. As they touched, the wind chime-like pendant around Cheonji's neck began to change once again. That day, Haram had been invited to attend the once every 3 years painting competition. As soon as he arrived, he helped Cheonji solve a big problem. As thanks, Cheonji escorted Haram to the competition area. But as soon as he left, Mansu, who had been following them closely, brought his master to the painting zone. During the competition, Cheonji added her usual butterfly mark to her painting, as was her habit. However, this almost cost her the right to participate. It turned out that Li Lu had previously seen the same butterfly symbol on a painting purchased from the bell pattern artist, and now instantly recognized it as her work. Even though Cheonji's painting was outstanding, Li Lu still eliminated her. Cheonji had no idea her identity as the bell pattern artist had been exposed. She assumed she had simply offended Li Lu earlier, and that Li Lu was now targeting her out of spite. Since Li Lu couldn't reveal the real reason publicly, he disqualified Cheonji. Disheartened, Cheonji had no choice but to leave the competition. At that moment, a voice called out to her. The head of the Art Institute, a master painter, had noticed that Cheonji was no ordinary contestant. He knew that the third prince had long wanted to restore a royal painting left behind by King Songjo, and Cheonji was exactly the person he'd been looking for. Suddenly, 2 butterflies fluttered from the sky and landed gently on Cheonji's plum blossom painting. It was a miraculous sign, confirming his belief that Cheonji was blessed with divine artistic power. He immediately used his authority to lift the ban on her participation. With no more obstacles, Cheonji successfully entered the finals. However, her team leader wanted her to withdraw. He was afraid that if Cheonji became famous, she might end up like her father, driven mad by the same fate. But Cheonji, having come so far, refused to give up. She understood his concern, but she had a bigger reason to compete. She needed medicine to cure her ailing father. His condition had worsened, and only a rare pill from the palace could save him. Winning the championship would allow her to make one request of the third prince. Cheonji was determined. Haram, who happened to overhear her, comforted her just like he did when they were children. Later, the two of them returned to the small river where they'd once spent time together in their youth. By now, Cheonji had already guessed that Haram was that boy from long ago. Their conversation mirrored the one they had back then, word for word. She could no longer hold it in and finally called out his name, Haram. That night, Haram didn't respond with words. Instead, he expressed himself with action. He gently kissed her. But the moment of tenderness stirred the sealed demon inside Haram, causing him agonizing pain. He fell into a nightmare, where he saw the demon's figure and was instantly jolted awake. His affection vanished like a dream. He denied being the boy from her past and told Cheonji to forget about him. Cheonji, unable to accept his sudden change, demanded, "If you're not him, then why did you kiss me? Why do you know my name?" Ha-Ram cut her off before she could say more and insisted on taking her home. Though Cheonji couldn't understand his reasoning, she couldn't forget him either. With the final round fast approaching, she forced herself to set aside her emotions and focus entirely on the competition. In a black and white ink painting, Cheonji depicted a group of vividly lifelike butterflies, making her artwork stand out among the rest. Thanks to her flawless composition and execution, she won the championship. Her painting even sold for a price equivalent to 300 sacks of grain. But what Cheonji cared about most was still her father's illness. So she approached Li Lu and voiced her wish to obtain a pill. Li Lu, moved by Cheonji's deep filial piety, didn't hesitate at all and agreed to her request. After the competition ended, Cheonji was commended by the king, who issued an edict for her to work at the garden and help restore the treasured royal painting. But Cheonji was reluctant. She couldn't leave her ailing father behind. It wasn't until Li Lu came to persuade her, promising to resolve all her concerns and assuring her that the palace medicine, the clear spirit pill, would be ready the next day, that Cheonji gratefully agreed. Meanwhile, Ha-Ram had begun enacting his revenge. His first target was the officer who had twice betrayed and killed his father. Ha-Ram eliminated him. Next in his sights was the former deputy curator. The following day, Cheonji bid farewell to her troop leader and headed to the garden. Before she left, the leader handed her a painting she had done, a pair of embroidered shoes, and asked her to give it to Li Lu as a token of thanks. But on the way, Cheonji was intercepted by the three goddesses. They just wanted a peek at the painting. When Cheonji refused, one of the goddesses waved her hand, freezing time. In a flash, she took the painting from her, waved her hand again at the tiger in the painting, then returned it. Another wave and time resumed. Cheonji was confused. When she turned around, the goddesses had vanished. She shook off the encounter and continued on her way, only to realize something strange. No matter which path she took, she ended up at the same place. Helpless, without hesitation, she stepped further in and again came face to face with Ha-Ram. But Ha-Ram, determined to carry out his revenge, pushed Cheonji away, rejecting her closeness. He had no idea that his rival in love, Li Lu, was already on his way. Li Lu arrived just in time to shelter Cheonji from the rain. He soon discovered she was burning up with fever and carried her without allowing objections. But the two were soon blocked by officials from Song country. Li Lu didn't want to yield. He questioned why Ha-Ram, if he had an agreement with Cheonji, allowed her to walk away. If she means so much, he said, why let her leave like that? As soon as Li Lu said this and prepared to take Cheonji away, he underestimated Ha-Ram's weight in her heart. With a single word, Ha-Ram called out, and Cheonji abandoned Li Lu without hesitation to follow him. Ha-Ram was torn. He wanted revenge but didn't want Cheonji dragged into it. He also couldn't stand the thought of her truly forgetting him. So he finally confessed what happened 10 years ago, but hid the revenge plot. Back at the palace, Li Lu hadn't given up. He confronted Ha-Ram, and the two, setting aside their titles, formally declared war for Cheonji's heart. Cheonji, unaware that she was the spark of their conflict, had just reported for duty at garden. She had no idea that she'd been assigned a very special mission. Officially, she was to restore old maps in the archives, but secretly, she was chosen to restore the legendary painting. She was taken to the secluded studio and only then did she begin to understand. The moment she saw the ruined Yurong painting, a residual demonic image frightened her. Xinghua, who had brought her there, rushed her out to help her recover. To ensure the restoration went smoothly, Li Lu came as well. He had seen the Yurong before its destruction and could describe its appearance in detail. Just as Cheonji prepared herself to begin the restoration. Suddenly, Cheonji noticed that the bracelet on her wrist had disappeared. Thinking back to the fall she had taken just moments ago, she hurried toward the store to search for it. But without an entry pass, she couldn't get in. At that moment, Ha-Ram happened to be passing by. With just one sentence, he helped Cheonji resolve the issue. Once inside, Cheonji was preoccupied with finding her bracelet and didn't notice Ha-Ram's abnormal condition. The seal on the demon inside him began to weaken. When Cheonji finally found the bracelet and turned around, She sensed that something was wrong with Haram. She quickly tried to take him outside. But by then, Haram was no longer himself. He flung Cheonji away with one powerful motion. Possessed by the demon, the man began searching for eyes the moment he awoke. Seeing the transformed Haram, Cheonji immediately realized he wasn't the same person. But by then, it was already too late to run. The demon grabbed her by the throat. No matter how much she struggled, it was useless. In desperation, she could only call out and try to awaken Haram's true consciousness. Hearing her voice, Haram's awareness began to resist from within. But how could a human possibly overcome the power of a demon? Haram had completely lost control of his body. Just when Cheonji was falling into despair, time suddenly stopped. A white tiger appeared, walking slowly across the rooftop. Horing, the guardian tiger, activated a powerful sealing spell. The demon was immediately suppressed. "This is your destiny," the tiger said. "You must work hard." The demon refused to give in, but Horing intensified the spell. No matter how much rage and resistance the demon showed, he was eventually forced back into the seal. Everything returned to normal. Horing then resumed the flow of time. Cheonji, having narrowly escaped death, looked at Haram with both sorrow and heartache. But her fear quickly faded, replaced entirely by concern. That night, she sat alone by Haram's bedside and unknowingly fell asleep. At that moment, the three-goddess grandmother appeared. She placed another butterfly on Haram's body. The next moment, the butterfly transformed into a mark. Horing reappeared and complained to the three-goddess grandmother about choosing such a roundabout way to deal with the demon. But the old goddess sighed and said there was no other choice. Demons couldn't be killed, only sealed. She had been waiting all this time for Cheonji to awaken her divine blessing, so she could create an eternal seal. The next day, Cheonji woke up to see Haram walking toward her. She was startled for a second but quickly realized this was the real Haram. Haram had no memory of what happened the previous night. He asked Cheonji what had occurred. "Your eyes turned white, your fingernails grew black and long, and you strangled me with strength like an iron pipe." Though Haram didn't believe it completely, he still ordered his men to investigate the matter. Just then, Cheonji worried that Haram might be too distracted to focus on work. Suddenly, she saw a tiny white tiger appear on the map, only to vanish in the next second. At the same time, a strange figure appeared behind her. Turning around quickly, Cheonji tried to call out, but didn't see anyone clearly. Then they finally turned and saw Horing. Horing was curious how Cheonji could see her. Then, upon seeing her eyes, she froze. Cheonji didn't understand. Seeing how rude she was acting, she tried to scold her like an adult. Little did she know, she was far older than her. The next moment, Cheonji found herself obediently serving tea. That night, while Cheonji was sleeping, a demon suddenly barged in. It grabbed her by the throat. Cheonji quickly began suffocating. Seeing Haram's dark red eyes, she immediately realized it wasn't him. A strange aura floated in from outside the door. It came into contact with the jade sword that Haram had given Cheonji, instantly activating the divine power left by the three-goddess grandmother. With both powers combined, the demon was swiftly forced back into its seal. The shockwave of divine energy also caused Cheonji to faint. The person who helped her from outside was a spirit from a painting, a creature that relied on spiritual energy from ancient stone art to survive. Cheonji had long been his chosen subject. Meanwhile, the former state minister suffered severe backlash from afar. It turned out she had orchestrated the demon's resurrection to help the second prince gain the demon's power. The second prince, blinded by ambition, believed that possessing the demon's power would guarantee him the throne, unaware that a mere mortal could never control such a force. At that moment, Cheonji had already woken up. She had originally just been staying the night at Haram's place. Who would have thought she'd nearly lose her life? She sat awake until dawn, only relaxing once Haram woke up. Still groggy, Haram was confused to find Cheonji in his room. Every time the demon resurfaces, Haram seems to lose consciousness and forget everything. Afraid that he wouldn't believe her again like last time, Cheonji claimed he must have sleepwalked into her room. Ha-Ram was a bit suspicious but quickly became distracted when he noticed how little he was wearing. Just then, Cheonji realized the situation too and snatched the blanket over herself. Before Cheonji could finish getting dressed, they heard the servant voice from outside looking for Ha-Ram. She rushed to deal with the servant, while urging Ha-Ram to hurry and get dressed. Still dazed, Ha-Ram got up slowly. Just then, an awkward moment occurred. Ha-Ram pulled up his pants in a fluster. Cheonji tried to quietly sneak him back to his room only to get caught red-handed. "What's going on here?" someone asked. Cheonji tried, but the more she said, the worse it sounded. Finally, she gave up, grabbed her clothes, and ran off. After sorting himself out, Ha-Ram began investigating his repeated blackouts. Disguising himself as the master of Moonstar Hall, he eventually coaxed the truth out of the second prince. Ha-Ram was in disbelief. A demon lived inside his body? But everything that had happened recently forced him to accept it. At the same time, Cheonji learned that the divine silk she was preparing was meant to seal the demon. But she didn't yet know that the demon was inside Ha-Ram. She only feared that once she completed the divine silk, she might go insane like her father did. Ha-Ram also discovered that making the silk was dangerous. He couldn't let Cheonji face that risk. So he invited her to the outskirts of the city, and the two shared a romantic afternoon. Afterward, he handed her a letter asking her to take her father and leave forever. Cheonji didn't understand, nor did she want to go. That's when Ha-Ram told her, "The demon is inside me. We can't be together." Before he could finish explaining, the third prince arrived with soldiers to arrest Ha-Ram. It turns out, when the third prince, who harbored feelings for Cheonji, learned of this, he feared for her safety and ordered Ha-Ram to be captured. Cheonji watched helplessly as Ha-Ram was taken away, utterly devastated. After a period of grief, she decided to return to the Painting Institute to forge the divine silk vessel, the only item capable of sealing away the Demon King and saving Ha-Ram. But before doing so, she desperately wanted to see Ha-Ram one last time. Unfortunately, the third prince refused coldly. Predictably, Cheonji's attempt to use the stars to forge the vessel failed. Her thoughts were still entangled with Ha-Ram, and without a calm heart, the divine spirit refused to infuse the painting with power. The third prince urged her to forget Ha-Ram for now and focus on painting again, but Cheonji felt completely lost and defeated. Just then, her mischievous friend showed up, and she came up with a plan: forge a fake order and sneak into the prison to see Ha-Ram. But the plan failed almost instantly. The third prince didn't know what else to do with her, so he reluctantly allowed the meeting. Yet when Cheonji and Ha-Ram met, things didn't go well. The moment they touched, the demon's power flared again. But this time, something was different. The spirit realm activated. They were pulled into a strange and mysterious space. In this dimension, Ha-Ram's blindness temporarily lifted, and he saw Cheonji, now grown up, for the first time. Before they could enjoy the moment, a dark figure appeared, the Demon King. He seized Cheonji and tried to steal her eyes, where his powers were hidden. Cheonji struggled in pain, and just as all seemed lost, the spirit realm once again awakened, saving her and restoring her spiritual power. However, Ha-Ram had been drained, his life essence extracted by a demonic artifact. Cheonji, seeing his lifeless body, panicked. The third prince rushed in, worried for her safety, and quickly pulled her out. The Demon King had vanished, but Ha-Ram was left for dead. There was nothing else to do except call a healer and try to calm Cheonji down, gently leading her away. But as they left, in the prison cell next door, a white-haired old man chanted several cryptic incantations in the ancient language. 3 talismans materialized from thin air, passed through the walls, and exploded into snowflake-like light. Amazingly, Ha-Ram was revived. Later, after calming down, Cheonji forced herself to regain composure. For Ha-Ram's sake, she vowed to successfully paint the real divine vessel. While trying to recall the broken fragments of the image, the Demon King's shadow appeared again. Cheonji, suppressing her terror, finally saw the true face of the vessel. With a steady hand, she began painting. In just one day, she completed what normally took 4. Though the vessel was completed, the sealing ritual did not go smoothly. Hidden inside the ceremonial was a woman, Cheonji, in disguise. To avoid exposure, Ha-Ram grabbed a razor-sharp blade barehanded. Cheonji gasped in horror. Ha-Ram quietly gestured for her to remain calm. Just then, outside the hall, the second prince pulled back his bow and gave the signal. His guards burst through the gates. Ha-Ram stumbled out first, covered in wounds, drawing everyone's attention, giving Cheonji the chance to escape. The second prince had long wanted to obtain the Demon King's power to seize the throne. While the king was ill, he had secretly abducted Ha-Ram from the royal prison. His plan, during the sealing ritual, lure the Demon King out and let it possess his own body. Cheonji, seeing Ha-Ram taken again, followed in secret, but her interference only led to Ha-Ram getting hurt once more. On the day of the ritual, Ha-Ram was tied to the altar, restrained with iron ropes. To ensure success, the second prince replaced the royal shaman with his own men. The Demon King was quickly summoned. For the first time, Ha-Ram experienced the Demon King's power while fully conscious. It was all thanks to the spirit realm's earlier intervention. They had discovered that the ring given to Cheonji could stabilize the Demon King's consciousness. So, they found a way to retrieve the original ring, and gave the second prince a fake. At this point, there was no turning back. The second prince shouted for the shaman to immediately begin the Demon King's possession ritual. As the incantations echoed, the Demon King's power surged into the second prince's body. He craved that power more than anything. But the Demon King had no intention of becoming his pawn. With a single strike, he sent the second prince flying. With another wave, he knocked everyone else to the ground. The shaman collapsed from exhaustion. Just then, the Minister of State seized the opportunity to resume the sealing ritual herself. But halfway through, the divine vessel unexpectedly shattered. Cheonji, who had just arrived, was shocked speechless. No one understood what went wrong. With no resistance left, the Demon King unleashed a massive attack, sweeping the entire chamber. As he prepared to strike again, Cheonji rushed forward to stop him. At this critical moment, his mysterious spiritual energy began to stir. But he hadn't fully reclaimed his strength. His control wavered. The Demon King, seeing Cheonji, turned toward her, wanting to reclaim the power sealed in Cheonji's eyes. He hurled away anyone in his way and advanced on her. Cheonji desperately tried to awaken Ha-Ram, unaware that deep inside, his consciousness was screaming at her to run. In this crisis, the third prince suddenly appeared and drew his soul-draining blade, stabbing the Demon King with a powerful strike. The Demon King's strength instantly plummeted. This weapon drained vital energy. And once again, the Demon King was sealed. The second prince, seeing Ha-Ram still alive and unharmed, flew into a rage and ordered them all captured. Just as things seemed hopeless, a group of black-clad warriors stormed in. They were Ha-Ram's loyal followers. Under their cover, Ha-Ram and Cheonji managed to escape. The second prince, furious, grabbed his bow and aimed but missed. Unbeknownst to the fleeing pair, the second prince, unable to locate them, retaliated by capturing Cheonji's friends and family. Later, while Cheonji searched late at night for her missing father, a group of thugs surrounded her. She tried to resist, but the second prince used her father as bait, threatening to harm him unless she completed another divine vessel. Cheonji didn't want to comply, but with her father's life hanging in the balance, she had no choice. Ha-Ram, learning that Cheonji had been taken, immediately rallied his forces to rescue her. They broke her out, but just as they prepared to escape, a troop of guards surrounded them. The second prince had anticipated this rescue and deliberately spread false intelligence to lure Ha-Ram into a trap. As expected, he showed up. In the chaos, Ha-Ram created a diversion, tossing a smoke bomb. The air filled with mist and confusion. He seized the chance and escaped with Cheonji. But just as they were about to break free, the second prince loosed another arrow. This time, it hit Cheonji's father. Badly wounded, he collapsed. Cheonji was overwhelmed with panic, but they couldn't afford to stop now. They fled to the outskirts. There, Cheonji's father, wounded by a poisoned blade, was barely holding on. As they reached safety, he suddenly regained clarity for a brief moment. Looking at Cheonji, he tried to smile. "You've done nothing wrong, you saved many people." And with that, he closed his eyes forever. Cheonji, devastated, sobbed uncontrollably. But the nightmare wasn't over. While she was still reeling from her father's death, the second prince captured more of her loved ones and brought them to the public execution ground, attempting to lure her into the open once again. When Cheonji heard, she immediately tried to rush to the scene. But Ha-Ram stopped her, knowing it was a trap. "You'll only get yourself killed," he said firmly. "I'll find another way," Ha-Ram promised, though they both knew it was likely just words to comfort her. As Ha-Ram left, Cheonji rushed out alone. Meanwhile, at the execution grounds, the second prince, seeing Cheonji hadn't shown up, ordered the execution to begin. At the critical moment, Cheonji finally arrived, out of breath and desperate. She believed that as long as she revealed herself, the second prince would spare the hostages. But she was wrong. Cheonji's eyes widened in disbelief. She shouted, begged, but the blade was already raised. Stricken with rage and sorrow, she surged forward, only to be held back by guards. Just as the second prince reveled in his triumph, the unconscious king, who had been missing for days, suddenly appeared at the execution site, putting an end to the second prince forever. Meanwhile, Ha-Ram learns the real truth. The king explained the truth. Years ago, when Ha-Ram was a child, he became the vessel for the Demon King. Their father had tried to save him, but the Demon King struck him down before he could. To protect the young Ha-Ram from guilt, the king had hidden the truth all these years. Ha-Ram had spent his life thinking his father had been murdered by an enemy, when in fact the enemy had always tried to protect him. The misunderstanding was resolved. Ha-Ram, letting go of vengeance, finally wanted to live a peaceful life. But just as things seemed to settle, the Demon King awoke again. Ha-Ram's left arm twisted, he lost control of himself and attacked Cheonji. He screamed inside, his claw gouged a deep scar into the palace wall. To protect Cheonji, Ha-Ram fled the palace that very night, without saying a word. But on the road, the Demon King's presence grew stronger. Ha-Ram collapsed by the roadside. When he awoke, he found the spiritual charm he'd once given Cheonji had mysteriously returned to his hand. An old man stood before him. It was his grandfather, someone he had never met. The old man spoke, "The Demon King is devouring you. If he is not sealed soon, you will doom everyone." And then, just like that, he vanished. Elsewhere, Cheonji awoke to find claw marks left behind on the wall. She instantly realized the Demon King was taking over Ha-Ram again. If Ha-Ram was to be saved, the Demon King must be sealed. Cheonji returned to the palace, determined to recreate the divine vessel. But the true vessel required one final element, something she still lacked. At that moment, Wayao appeared to her. Only by forming a pact with Wayao, he explained, could the vessel be infused with divine essence strong enough to trap the Demon King. Without hesitation, Cheonji entered into the pact. As the red moon, the optimal time to seal the Demon King, rose into the sky, Cheonji began the ritual, preparing the divine vessel. She waited, hoping Ha-Ram would arrive before it was too late. Meanwhile, Ha-Ram had just destroyed the cursed ring that anchored the Demon King inside him. But in doing so, he triggered the final awakening of the Demon King. Tormented and weakened, he still forced himself toward the palace, only to collapse at the gates, his body fully overtaken. His first action, searching for the celestial eyes that had been sealed inside Cheonji for so long. Within the protective barrier, Cheonji continued the ritual, but the barrier began to crack. A sorcerer, loyal as ever, tried to block the Demon King, but she was hurled aside in a flash. The Demon King lashed out with power. With a single motion, he sent all the artists preparing the seal flying. The next second, the Demon King appeared directly in front of Cheonji. Without hesitation, he tore away the divine power that granted her sight, rendering her completely blind. As his demonic claw reached for her, two powerful forces descended from above, pulling him back just in time. It was Danshin Grandma and the tiger. Together, they fought to hold the Demon King at bay, giving Cheonji a sliver of time to finish the divine vessel. But Cheonji faltered, blind and disoriented. Then, from the silence behind her, a warm, glowing presence emerged. It was the spirit of her father. With his words anchoring her, her hands moved again, and she completed the final steps of the divine vessel. At that moment, the chamber exploded with golden light. The divine vessel was complete. They rushed to use it, but the fully awakened Demon King struck back with overwhelming force. Even the sorcerer was knocked aside, and he was too powerful to restrain. Danshin Grandma saw the truth. There was only one way to end it. She turned to the tiger with a soft, knowing smile and whispered, "This is my last gift." In a final act of sacrifice, she transformed into a swirl of divine butterflies, wrapped herself around the Demon King, and plunged into the divine vessel. With a final chant, Danshin Grandma sealed him away, forever. Ha-Ram awakened, no longer possessed, and for the first time in years, he could see her. Danshin Grandma's final act had lifted the curse. Ha-Ram broke into tears and pulled her close. This time, no darkness came between them. Cheonji thought she would lose her sight for a lifetime, but unexpectedly, she soon regained her vision. It turned out that Grandma, at the last moment, helped her lift the ancestral curse, the non-existent Demon King. After that, they finally began a happy life together. 5 years passed, and they were still as loving as ever. Cheonji and Ha-Ram left the palace behind and found peace in the countryside, not far from the riverbank where they once painted as children. Their son, Ah-Jun, came running through the field, laughter trailing behind him. And at last, they were surrounded by the things they cherished most. Thanks for watching. Please like and drop a heart if you love the series.